Where does your favorite team's NFL offense rank entering the 2022 NFL season? Today, I rank every single NFL offense from 32 to 1. And before we get started, make sure to check out my social medias in the description, as well as hitting that like button while subscribing to this channel for more NFL content. Without further ado, let's get right into the rankings. Kicking off the list at number 32, I have the Chicago Bears offense. Now, the Bears offense, to me, has a few bright spots, or at least spots where I could see them succeeding. I think the Bears have a decent running back with David Montgomery. I think Cole Kmet has potential at tight ends. I think Justin Fields even has potential at quarterback, and of course, Darnell Mooney I like a lot. Here are the problems with this offense that makes them the worst in the league. First of all, completely new scheme. They hired a quarterbacks coach from the Green Bay Packers. They don't have anybody, I think, that can augment that. So the scheme really kills them here, and scheme is a big thing for these rankings. Another thing, the receiver position outside of Darnell Mooney is either extremely questionable or probably just bad. The fact that they signed N'Keal Harry actually made me push them back to a 1 because N'Keal Harry is probably the worst receiver in the league, and they don't have much else outside of really Darnell Mooney. You know, they do have Byron Pringle, who is interesting, but I kind of just think is a Mahomes product. They have Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis, Tajay Sharp, all these kind of journeyman receivers as like guys that might be starting for them, which is crazy to me. The quarterback position, Justin Fields has potential, but we haven't seen much from him yet, so he's still a question mark. The offensive line, I think, is the worst in football. So overall, the Bears offense, to me, doesn't have much potential. They have a few quality players, but overall, to me, is the worst offense in the NFL. At number 31, I have the Houston Texans offense. The Texans offense is pretty boring and pretty lackluster, if we're going to be honest. Now, they do have, again, like the Bears, a few decent elements to them. I think their offensive line isn't the worst in the world, but it's not good. Actually, fairly far from it. Davis Mills did show some flashes in 2021, but I think it's getting a little overblown because of where he was drafted. I think if he were drafted in the top 10, we would be looking at him as, whatever. I think their receiver position has a little bit of potential. Of course, you've got Brandon Cooks there, who is a very good receiver, but you've also got Nico Collins and John Mechie, who in their own right are pretty decent, or could be at least. But other than that, like the run game doesn't have much to speak of. The tight end position is pretty weak, and the scheme in general is just not very promising to me. So that is why the Texans perform so poorly on my scale and rank as the 31st best offense in the NFL right now. At number 30, I have the Seattle Seahawks offense. The Seahawks offense is one that should take a significant step back due to the loss of Russell Wilson, obviously. They are currently starting Drew Lock on the depth chart, although I have seen some stuff saying they may actually consider Geno Smith. I'm going to assume it's Drew Lock, and thus I'm going to assume that they're not going to be very good at quarterback. The running back position is interesting because I think Rashad Penny has shown some flashes, but overall, I don't really rate him all that highly. The receiver position is really good with Metcalf and Lockett, but outside of that, they don't really have much. Plus, I'm not sure how either of those guys are going to produce without Wilson, so that takes them down a little bit. The tight end position, it's pretty meh with Gerald Everett. The offensive line's very bad, and the scheme is pretty bad. So the Seahawks offense in general, outside of the receiver position, there's not really much to be excited about in Seattle. At number 29, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. The Jags offense, of these kind of bottom offenses, I think actually probably has the most potential to be decent by the end of the year, because I do think they have some playmakers to them, and they have a very promising quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I am rising on a little bit. I don't think he's as bad as some people were making out last year. His stats would indicate. He certainly has all the physical tools to be good this year, and if he is 150% better than he was last year, if he's 50% better, if he's 150% of what he was last year, then this offense has potential. Now, the running back position is interesting because they have had some injuries there, but as of right now, I think Robinson and Etienne are both play, and I rate Robinson pretty highly, and Etienne is still a young player with a lot of potential. The receiver position is interesting. I think they overpaid Christian Kirk, but he's still a solid player. Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, guys like that, Laviska Shenault, pretty decent players without a ton else. They don't really have a game changer, is what I'm kind of trying to say, but they have a solid core. They don't really have a tight end. Evan Ingram's whatever. I think he's kind of, a bust at this point. The offensive line is not very good, and that's where I'm lowering on this team. They did get Brandon Scherf, but the rest of the line scares me. And the scheme, I think, could be better than I have it graded as, but I'm not completely sure because with Doug Peterson, you're out of the game. Their offensive coordinator is still a little bit unknown to below average to me. So the Jags offense is one that has some potential, but still, as of right now, is one of the worst in the league. At number 28, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. The Steelers offense, to me, is one that I also see probably declining from last season. Now, it wasn't very good last year, so that's saying a lot, but I just look at this offense as one of the weaker units in football. There's elements to it that I like. I like Najee Harris. I think they've added a little bit of depth at running back. Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, not terrible backups at least. They have decent receivers. You look at Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and they still also have they also drafted George Pickens. Freiermuth was promising at tight end. The problem, though, for me, three things: quarterback, offensive line, and scheme, and that's pretty important. They have a completely unproven quarterback. Trubisky, we haven't seen in a while, and Kenny Pickett, we have no idea about. So whoever they start, I think it'll be Trubisky, is a huge question mark. The offensive line is just not very talented, and I'm not high on Matt Canada whatsoever off last year. So the Steelers' offense has some elements that I like, but overall, fundamentally, at some of the bigger things, they really struggle, which puts them pretty low on my list. At number 27, I have Baker Mayfield's new team, the Carolina Panthers. I have the Panthers at quarterback graded about a 6 out of 10 because I think that's what Baker is. I don't think he's a completely terrible player. I think he's shown too much to say that, but I certainly have questions about him and his decision making at times, his ability to just he kind of moves out of the he tries to run even when he's getting good protection. I have questions about Baker Mayfield to summarize that, but they have a great running back when he's on the field. Christian McCaffrey, one of the best in football. The receiving core is interesting. DJ Moore's really good. Robbie Anderson's shown flashes. They have a decent amount of depth. It's nothing special, but it's solid. The tight end position's basically non-existent for this team, though. The offensive line's improved, but I still don't think it's good. And the scheme is just not good, in my opinion. I'm not a Ben McAdoo fan, nor am I a Matt Rule fan. So overall, the Panthers come out with, again, they're a lot like the Steelers, some talent. I think they have a little more talent than Pittsburgh does, and I trust their quarterback even a little more. But right now, I still think this team is too much of a question mark at a lot of important places to say that they're going to be much higher than this ranking. So at number 27, I have the Carolina Panthers. At number 26, maybe a little bit of a shocker, I have the Tennessee Titans. I think the Tennessee Titans offense this year is going to regress hard without A.J. Brown. And the thing is, the Titans offense already wasn't elite. Like, you look at the Titans last season, so we look at the teams that lost major receivers, the Chiefs, the Packers, and the Titans. Tennessee last season, by far the worst offense of those three. you look at this offense, there's just a ton of questions with them. At quarterback, you're looking at Ryan Tannehill, a solid to good quarterback, but is he anything more than that? At this point, I don't know, and it seems like right now he's a little shaken up. I'm not a huge fan of the vibes with him right now, but I give him enough respect to rank him at an 8 out of 10. Derrick Henry's amazing. He is the best running back in football when he was healthy. I ranked him, I believe, second, but he is certainly a 5 out of 5 player. The receiver position, though, is where I think they've regressed. They have added Robert Woods, who I think at this point is probably more of a 2 than a 1. Treylon Burks, who I like, but we'll see. And they don't really have anyone else. At tight end, they did add Austin Hooper, but I think Austin Hooper is pretty overrated at this point. He's a name, but if you actually look at the production, it hasn't really been there in a few years. And the offensive line is not very good. It's gotten worse without Roger Saffold. And the scheme was awful last year. Todd Downing was a disaster as a play caller last year. So maybe this is a little harsh on the Titans, but overall, this offense to me is just not very promising. And with Henry only getting older and with more wear and tear on him, I think they may have to rely more on the passing game to be effective this year, especially with a worse offensive line in run blocking. So the Titans offense to me, even though they have a few names, like they have Tannehill, Woods, Henry, a couple offensive linemen, they have a few names that would suggest they're not that bad of an offense, and they could be better than this ranking. But when you look deeper into it, I really think this offense has a lot of concerns. At number 25, I have the Atlanta Falcons offense. The Falcons offense will, of course, take a step back without Matt Ryan, but I don't necessarily think they're completely incompetent, if that makes sense. Like, the Falcons still, to me, have an awesome tight end in Kyle Pitts, and they still have a decent scheme with Arthur Smith, who I think is overall a pretty good play caller, a pretty good schemer, and is someone that I think is only getting better. But they're still weak at quarterback, whether that be Mariota or Ritter. They're still not very deep at running back, even though I like how Patterson played last year. I don't know if he can continue that. The receiver core, I mean, did it get better? I'm not sure. Gage basically swaps with London, and then there's not really much else there. The offensive line is not completely awful, but it's still bad. So the Falcons offense overall has a few decent elements like some of the other teams I just mentioned, but overall is just not very promising and comes in at number 25. At number 24, I have the New York Jets offense. I think the Jets offense has some potential this year. My question would be at the running back position, because they have a decent amount of depth, but overall, I don't see a single starting caliber running back that I'm sold on right now. So we'll see what happens there. I think Breece Hall probably gets the start. Maybe it's Michael Carter, but they'll probably split. That could be a promising duo, but right now I'm just not very high on it. They've got a really promising tight end duo, or even trio. CJ Uzoma, Tyler Conklin, both guys I ranked in my top 20, and Jeremy Ruckert was probably my favorite tight end in the NFL draft. So they add a tight end trio here that could really be dangerous towards defenses, especially with Zach Wilson and his arm and his ability to throw over the middle. They have a good to very good offensive line now that is above average to at least average at every single starting position. They have a pretty deep receiving core. You look at Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Denzel Mims, Braxton Berrios, all guys that can play. Zach Wilson, it kind of depends on him. You know, if Zach Wilson is able to take a step up this season, then this offense could genuinely be good, and it would not surprise me. Now, I haven't seen it yet, but just saying, if this happens, it would not shock me at all if the Jets offense was good. The scheme is also a bit of a question mark, but it's not completely terrible. It's at least capable enough to put them in positions to succeed with Michael Fleur there. So the Jets' offense is one that I certainly think has higher upside than this. There's just a couple questions to them right now that I need answered before I can move them higher. At number 23, I have the other New York team, or New York City-based team. That is the New York Giants offense. The Giants offense is similar in terms of they have upside. I think the Giants offense, where I look at them, is the scheme department. Adding in Brian Daboll is an absolute huge difference maker. He is a significantly better offensive coordinator than anyone they've had in years. And he's going to elevate everyone on this offense. He's going to make Daniel Jones a better quarterback. He's going to make Saquon Barkley a better, more consistent running back if he's able to stay on the field. And I think that's the key for the Giants. If this offense is able to stay on the field, then I think they can be kind of dangerous. I think their receiving core has potential. You look at Kenny Golladay, when he's on the field, one of the better contested catch guys in the league. Kadarius Toney, all sorts of deep speed. You still have Sterling Shepard, who's a solid possession guy, and even a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who can do a little bit of everything. You still have at tight end, I think they're a little weaker, so that might be the area of concern. But the offensive line, which was horrendous last season, is a lot better. It is now at least a decent offensive line with all of the additions they've made, whether that be Evan Neal or Mark Glowinski on that right side. Big additions there. This offense, to me, has potential to be pretty decent, but again, like the Jets, I just need to see it to come together before I can fully believe in it. At number 22, I have the New Orleans Saints offense. Another offense that just has a ton of question marks. But if they are playing with all of their guys and they get some things to go their way, they can be higher than this, for sure. I think the Saints, Jameis Winston at quarterback, I think he's going to be solid. I think he's obviously not a safe bet, but I actually think he'll be decent with the Saints this year. I think he's going to have a decent year if he's able to stay healthy, that is. Kamara out for 6 games is a bit concerning, which is why I bumped them down from a 5 to a 4. But when he's on the field, still one of the best running backs in the league. The receiver position's interesting because I'm not sure what to make of Thomas's availability or not, and I'm not sure what to expect from him after basically missing the better part of 2 straight seasons. But I still think Michael Thomas is going to be good. I like Chris Olave, at least as a complimentary guy. Landry and Callaway are decent depth pieces as well. They don't really have a tight end, at least that they use very much in passing situations, so that doesn't rank very high. The offensive line is where I think they've regressed a lot from previous seasons. You know, the Saints' offensive line for years was just a dominant pass-blocking unit. They're not that anymore without Teron Armstead. They did not play very well last season. You know, Ramchek's great, but they have questions in the interior, and Penning at left tackle is a wait and see to me. And the scheme, you know, I still expect it to be good. Pete Carmichael's been there forever, but he's not Sean Payton, so they don't get the 9 out of 9 there either. So the Saints overall have potential as an offense, but again, like the previous 2 teams, there are certainly questions with them and their overall proficiency as an offense. At number 21, I have the Detroit Lions offense. The Lions offense has significantly improved this offseason. I think the question's still Jared Goff, but you look at what's around him. DeAndre Swift, a pretty good to very good running back with a lot of potential. An elite, one of the top 5, one of the best offensive lines in football. A receiving duo with Williams and St. Brown that I think can be really promising, as well as DJ Chark, who's a solid complementary option, with guys following him up like Reynolds and Cephas that are at least decent, even Raymond. TJ Hawkinson, one of the better tight ends in football. This offense has a lot of talent. The two questions, though, are what matter most, and that's quarterback and scheme. I'm not huge on Ben Johnson as an offensive coordinator, nor am I huge on Dan Campbell as purely just an offensive coordinator and schemer. But Jared Goff as well is a question mark. We haven't really seen Jared Goff play very well since 2018. So if you were to tell me Jared Goff has a good year and this scheme's better than I think, the Lions offense could be actually pretty good. But right now, again, with question marks at the most important spots offensively, I have to put them a little bit lower. At number 20, at the Washington Commanders offense. The Commanders offense, I think, is a little slept on right now. You look at their overall offense. So Carson Wentz at quarterback, a solid player, frustrating, maddeningly inconsistent, but overall a solid quarterback. At running back, they've got Antonio Gibson, they've got J.D. McKissick, they've got a decent amount of depth there, enough to give them a 3 out of 5. At receiver, they added Dotson. They still have Samuel, although he was a little disappointing last year, and they have McLaurin. So that's enough to make them a pretty good receiving core. Not elite, but pretty good. Logan Thomas is a solid tight end. They've got a good offensive line, not great. And they've got a good scheme, not great. So overall, this is a pretty decently just solid offense without a ton of huge flaws, but without a ton of upside to me either that I can see them being elite at. At number 19, I have the New England Patriots offense. And this is weird to say, for the first time in a while, I think this Patriots unit is held back by its coaching. I look at the talent. Offensively, it's pretty strong. I think they've got a good quarterback right now with Mac Jones, 8 out of 10. They've got a good running back duo with Stevenson and Harris. They've got a decent receiver room, Aguilar, Bourne, Thornton, Parker, Myers in there as well. It's decently deep and overall has solid enough playmakers. I don't think they've got a game breaker, but I think they've got enough depth to give them a 4 out of 8. They've got a pretty good tight end to very good in Hunter Henry. They've got an elite offensive line. The question with this team right now is scheme. And I trust Bill Belichick enough to not completely give them a 1. But Matt Patricia as your offensive coordinator is a complete disaster. And he's listed there right now. And that holds back this unit. So if they had even an average offensive coordinator right now to me, they would be probably a top 15 unit. But right now, with Matt Patricia, I cannot put them any higher than this, even though I actually think talent-wise, they're better than they were last year. And last year, efficiency-wise, they were a top 10 offense in football. At number 18, I have the Arizona Cardinals offense. And the Cardinals are another team that I think is a little bit held back by coaching on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe not to the extent that the Patriots are, but you look at their talent, it's pretty good as well. You look at a quarterback, Kyler Murray, a very good player. A running back, they've got James Conner, who had a pretty good year last year. I'm not sure if he can repeat that, but I'll give him credit where it's due. At receiver, I do dock them a bit for Hopkins being suspended, but Hopkins and Brown is a dynamic duo when they'll be on the field, and enough for me to put them at a 6 out of 8. Zach Ertz had a pretty good year at tight end last season for them. But the two weaknesses are the offensive line of this game. I'm not a Cliff Kingsbury fan. I think his offense is very basic, and I'm not a fan of his play calling. And the offensive line's pretty weak. It's not as strong as the Patriots, certainly. So this offense has a potential to be in the top 10, but with some of the questions and some of the weaknesses, I can't quite put them that high because, to me, scheme is vital to most offenses. I don't really like the Cardinals, and they're also weak along the offensive line, which is pretty important for their run game. And at the receiver position, they are losing their best guy for 6 games. So the Cardinals come in for me as the number 18 offense in the NFL. At number 17, I have the Denver Broncos offense now with Russell Wilson. I'm excited to see what the Broncos offense brings to the table in 2022, but I feel like there is a ton of questions with this offense. I like the talent, though. I think Russell Wilson's still a very good quarterback. I gave him a 9 out of 10. I think he will eventually adjust to the system. It'll take some time, and I don't know if he's quite a 10 out of 10 player anymore, but he's still a great quarterback. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are a very good running back duo, I think underrated. The receiving core is interesting. They've got Sutton, Patrick, Judy, Hamler. It's pretty deep. I don't know if they have necessarily an alpha, awesome number one guy. And I do think they have a couple interesting types of players and kind of go either way guys. So I can't put them at too high of a score, but that amount of depth alone gives them a 5 out of 8. The tight end's just non-existent for this team, which hurts them. But offensive line, it's pretty good. The scheme with now Nathaniel Hackett, I loved what he did in Green Bay. With the RPOs and the quick passing game and how he was able to kind of isolate Devontae Adams with one-on-one players. I am a big fan of that. So I think this Broncos offense has the talent to be a top 10 offense by the end of the season. They certainly do. But again, a new system, a new quarterback, a new, just overall offense. And they weren't relatively close to being a good offense last year. So this is an offense that can go either way, but certainly has a ton of upside entering the 2022 season. The Denver Broncos come in for me as the 17th best offense in the NFL. At number 16, I have the Baltimore Ravens offense. The Ravens offense has an Achilles heel, and it's the Achilles heel that they've had for a while, but they've still got a ton of really awesome pieces. Lamar Jackson. A lot of kind of discussion around him right now. Spoiler alert, he's a really awesome quarterback, and he's going to have a great year this year, I think. I think this will be the best we've seen of Lamar Jackson since his MVP season. I think he's coming into the year with an edge. I think he's coming into the year with the best offensive line he's had in a while, which gets to another point. I really like the offensive line for this team. I think they're going to be powerful and big and better in pass protection with Ronnie Stanley back, with Linderbaum added. So this offensive line is going to be good. They have the best tight end of last season, Mark Andrews, arguably the best tight ends in the league at tight ends. The running back core isn't great, but I mean, they've still got enough depth there to give them a 3 out of 5 for me. The wide receiver room is the concern to me. They don't really have anything bar Rashad Bateman. So, the Marquise Brown trade was kind of a killer to me, to this team's true Super Bowl contender status. Combine that with the passing scheme that I'm just not very high on, but because of Greg Roman's proficiency with run scheming, I do give them a decent grade with the scheme. So overall, the Ravens are a good offense, one that I can see finishing better than 16th, but that Achilles heel of wide receiver pulls them back just a bit. At number 15, I have the Indianapolis Colts offense. The Colts offense, to me, has maybe the best run game in the NFL. At least they're in that conversation. Jonathan Taylor is an absolute animal at running back. I think he's the best in the league. They have a great run-blocking offensive line. So that situation, that area of the offense is intact. The passing game is where I think they could improve. And I think they're better in the passing game than they were last season. I think Matt Ryan's an upgrade as a passer and overall quarterback from Carson Wentz. I think Matt Ryan's going to have a pretty good year. I think the receiving core is promising, but not overly talented. I think Pittman's a number one receiver, but he's not, a top 15 guy or anything like that. I like Alec Pierce, who they drafted. I even think Paris Campbell, if he's able to stay on the field, could actually have a pretty decent year in this offense with his speed. And Mo Alley Cox is whatever at tight end. But overall, the weapons kind of leave a little bit to be desired for this team, which is why I put them a little bit. I don't put them quite in the top 10. I put them in more in the top 15. The offensive line, though not what it once was, is still very good as well. And I think Frank Reich is a very underrated coach, offensive play caller, and offensive schemer. So overall, this Colts offense has potential to be a little higher than this even. And I also think they're pretty safe. And I think they're going to be one of the best rushing attacks in the league, along with an improved passing game. At number 14, I have the Cleveland Browns offense. The Browns offense, to me, is the hardest to rank in the entire NFL, and it's not particularly close. I think Deshaun Watson is the X factor, and I think that's obvious. I think Deshaun Watson is going to play some games, but not all, which is what pushes their quarterback ranking down to a 7 out of 10 for me, because I just don't know what to expect from that position. But other than that, they're pretty much set. Now, I love the running back position. I love the offensive line position. I think those are just both complete. I like David Njoku at tight end. I think the receiving core is interesting. Cooper is good. Peoples-Jones is interesting. I'm not sure if he can be a wide receiver too, but he could be. But they aren't overly proven, which is why they're only a 3 out of 8 for me. The scheme, wasn't as impressed with Stefanski last season. I will say that. But I am still giving him that respect of having called great run games over the last 2 years. So I'm going to give them a 7 out of 9 there. And so overall, this offense has potential with Deshaun Watson to be really explosive, because if you combine an elite run game with an explosive pass game, I think you can be one of the best offenses in the NFL, as we've seen the Titans do it in the past and other teams like that. But again, with the amount of question marks with that whole situation, I have to knock them down a bit to number 14. At number 13, I have the Miami Dolphins offense. The Dolphins offense is one that has all sorts of skill talent, but again, like a couple of the offenses we've talked about, at some of the more important positions is kind of a wait and see, specifically quarterback. Now, I'm not the biggest hater of Tua Tagovailoa, but we still need to see a lot more improvement from him before we can say he can take this offense to the next level. Because the guy we've seen over the last 2 years, I don't think is good enough to take this to being a top 10 offense. The running back position has improved. They've added a lot of depth. They've added Raheem Mostert, who I think is pretty good. So I give them a 3 out of 5 there. I'm impressed with that position and how they've been able to improve it. The receiving core, Tyreek Hill is fast. Jalen Waddle is fast. Cedric Wilson is a really underrated receiver 3. So they get a perfect score for me, 8 out of 8. Mike Gesicki at tight end, very good player. The offensive line is still a bit questionable, but it's not as bad as it was last season. The scheme, I actually like Mike McDaniel. I give him an 8 out of 9. I am a little worried that he may have been a Shanahan product, but for the most part, I think he's a very good schemer. And he was the guy who was also, he was really impactful with play calling for the Niners last year. So Mike McDaniel, I give their scheme an 8 out of 9 there. So this Dolphins offense certainly has a lot of talent. It all really comes down to if Tua can be the guy or not. As of right now, for me, they rank in at number 13. At number 12, I have the Los Angeles Chargers offense. The Chargers offense is led by their absolute superstar quarterback, Justin Herbert, who I gave a 10 out of 10 grade. I think Justin Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, a ridiculous arm, who showed that even in a short passing game system last season, he can thrive. I'm expecting more deep shots this year, though. I think their scheme will be better. I think Joe Lombardi is going to improve, or should at least, second year. At running back, they've got Austin Eckler, who I like a lot. I ranked him at number 8 in my running back rankings. Williams and Allen are a good duo. I like Guyton as the third guy in, kind of a slot role down the field, though. He doesn't play slot, but he's a great downfield threat. He's a number 3 receiver. I don't think it's an upper echelon receiving core, but I certainly think it's good. I think their tight ends is whatever position, really. They have a couple guys there. Their offensive line, though, is pretty strong across the board. They've got guys like Matt Filer. They've got, of course, Corey Linsley, Rashawn Slater. So this offense is fairly well-rounded. I have a few questions about scheme, but other than that, it would not shock me at all if this Chargers offense came out in the top 10. And for me, it ranks in at number 12. At number 11, I have the Green Bay Packers offense. The Packers offense, to me, is being a little underrated right now because of the loss of Devontae Adams. And obviously, that is a monumental loss, but they still have Aaron Rodgers, the back-to-back MVP, still one of the best quarterbacks in football. They've got a very good running back duo with Jones and Dillon, one of the better ones in the league. They've got an excellent offensive line. I ranked it in my top 5. I think it's being very underrated right now. And they've got a great scheme with Matt LaFleur. The weaknesses for this team is really receiving weapons. And they only come out to a 2 out of 8 at receiver and a 2 out of 6 at tight end. But overall, this offense is pretty complete. And they do have a couple guys that have potential. You look at Christian Watson there at receiver, who I really like out of the draft. You've also got Robert Tonyan, who was pretty good for them in 2020 before getting hurt last year. But overall, this Packers offense is pretty talented. I think it's a little better than most people think. And I still believe with Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur will be a productive unit in 2022. So at number 11, I have the Green Bay Packers offense. At number 10, I have the Philadelphia Eagles offense. The Eagles offense is one of the best rush offenses in the NFL. They were the best last season. Now, it's not necessarily overwhelming talent at the running back position. Miles Sanders is a good player, but not special. It stems from the offensive line. This offensive line is the best in the football, especially in run blocking. Jalen Hurts, also with his legs, adds to that. But you look at where this team improved, it's the receiving corps. Adding A.J. Brown, one of the best receivers in the league, makes this a 7 out of 8 receiving corps to me. So you combine A.J. Brown with Devontae Smith. You still have Dallas Goedert, one of the best tight ends in football. And the question mark on this offense is really Jalen Hurts and his ability as a passer. But because of his ability as a rusher, I did give him a 6 out of 10, which isn't, a completely terrible score. So the Eagles offense, I think, is pretty complete. And with improvements from Jalen Hurts as a passer, could even be higher than this. I'm pretty high on it. And for me, it comes in at number 10 as one of the 10 best offenses in football. At number 9, I have the Minnesota Vikings offense. The Vikings offense might very well be the most underrated in football right now. This is the top 10 offense, I think, and no one's really talking about it. They've got a good quarterback, Kirk Cousins. They have one of the best running backs in the league, Dalvin Cook. They have arguably the best receiver in the league, Justin Jefferson, a very good number 2, Adam Thielen, an underrated number 3 with KJ Osborne, a solid in 2020 who was hurt last year tight end with Irv Smith, a not good but not terrible offensive line anymore, and they have Kevin O'Connell, who everyone's talking about as the tall Sean McVay, which I don't know if I completely buy that, but I'm a fan of his. I think this offense is really good, and it's really talented. I think they're going to be very effective running the ball, and I think with Kevin O'Connell, they'll have more of a passing game this year, just in shotgun, empty situations down the field and in the intermediate to short ranges. I think they're going to be a better, more consistent passing game with more creative uses of their talented guys, especially Justin Jefferson, with the strong run game they've had for years. So the Vikings come in my top 10 because I truly believe this year they're going to end up as a top 10 offense, and I think they have the talent to do so. At number 8, I have the San Francisco 49ers offense. The 49ers offense is awesome. There is one question with this offense. Well, there's one major question with this offense. That the running back position, Elijah Mitchell is very good, and Kyle Shanahan always brings a great run game. Kyle Shanahan's the best offensive schemer in the league. They've got an excellent receiver trio of Samuel, Ayuk, and Jennings, all of which I think are very good within their certain roles. They have one of the 2 best tight ends in football with George Kittle. They have an offensive line, though, that I do think has regressed in free agency and the draft. I do think they are not as strong as they were last season with the loss of Laken Tomlinson, who was very good for them for years at guard. I do think it's still solid, but it's not going to be as good as it was last season. They also lost Alex Mack to retirement, so that center spot's a bit of a question mark as well. But overall, the big question for this team is quarterback, for this offense, and for this team in general. Is it going to be Trey Lance? I think so. He and Lance Garoppolo, though, honestly, this offense is still probably going to be in the top 10 regardless, unless they just have abhorrently bad injury luck. Lance, I think, maximizes more of the run game. I think Garoppolo maximizes more of the pass game, at least this season. But either way, I've seen Kyle Shanahan work his magic with Nick Mullins, right? And Matt Schaub. So I have confidence in him to bring a top 10 offense to the table in 2022. This offense is still loaded with talent, and I have them come in at number 8. At number 7, I have the Dallas Cowboys offense. The Cowboys offense is really complete when you really look at it. There is only one semi-hole, and that's a position they were previously very strong at. Their quarterback, Dak Prescott, I think is a 9 out of 10. I think he's a very, very, very good quarterback that is not quite in the top tier, but is really good. The running back core is still good. I think Zeke's still pretty solid. I think Tony Pollard's still solid. I think that's one of the better running back duos in the league. Their offensive line is maybe not the best of the best, but it's still very good. I like the tight ends a lot with Dalton Schultz. He was one of the best in the football last season. I think at receiver is where I worry a little bit because they did lose some depth pieces there with Cedric Wilson and, of course, Amari Cooper. You've still got CeeDee Lamb, though, who's very good. You've also still got Michael Gallup, who I think can still be a number 2 for you. So they're not completely hopeless there, but it is an area of something to watch, I guess. The scheme with Kellen Moore is usually good. I think that's something I think Dallas could be improving on. I think Kellen Moore is a typically good offensive coordinator that has some off days relative to some of the top guys. And so that's why I'm a little bit more concerned about him compared to some of the top guys and what holds this offense off a little bit from being top 5. But overall, it's a really good offense and one of the most talented in the league. And I expect to be very good once again in the 2022 season. At number 6, a little bit low compared to usual, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs offense has taken a step back, and I think that's pretty obvious. Tyreek Hill was the central hub, the thing that made this offense so tough to stop. One of the greatest offenses in NFL history over an extended time. His deep speed is simply irreplaceable in the NFL. You're not going to find a replacement for Tyreek Hill. That being said, the people that think this offense is going to crater and just completely fall apart without him are losing their minds. First of all, they still have Andy Reid, one of the best offensive coaches of all time, still one of the best in the game today. I give their scheme a 9 out of 9. They have Patrick Mahomes, on his way to being one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. At least he's on that trajectory. He is still maybe the best quarterback in the league. They get a 10 out of 10 there. They still have Travis Kelce, one of the best, if not, in my opinion, the best in the NFL. One of the best of all time. Still awesome. The offensive line is still one of the best in football. Was last year, will be this year. Should be better this year with more continuity. They're still top of the NFL in all those positions. At running back, they're not great, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire there as the starter. They did add Ronald Jones, which is why their depth is a little better this year. But overall, I'm not too thrilled with that position. And again, receiver takes a huge hit. They do have some guys I like. I like Sky Moore out of the draft. I think Mecole Hardman came on towards the end of last season. I think Juju Smith-Schuster will be better this year than he's been in years past. So this offense has some guys in the receiving game that I'm interested in. But overall, it's a far cry from what they were with Tyreek Hill, which is why they are lowered here. But this offense is still going to be really good, really awesome, and honestly would not be surprised one bit if they were in the top 5. So at number 6, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. At number 5, I have the Buffalo Bills offense. This is offense that is led by one man, and that man is Josh Allen. Josh Allen is so good as a runner. He is so good as a passer. He elevates this entire offense just by his sheer nature. He is that good. No explanation needed. 10 out of 10. The running back position is a little deeper now. They still have Devin Singletary. He was pretty good for them last season for the most part. They've added James Cook as a receiving option. I gave them a 3 out of 5 there. I think their receiver room's very strong. I think Stephon Diggs is still one of the best players in the game in that position. I think Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Jamison Crowder are all very solid depth pieces. I think Dawson Knox is due for a breakout year at tight end. I really liked how he played last season. I think their offensive line is solid. I don't think it's spectacular. I think it's pretty average, but I think it's good enough. And I think their scheme with Ken Dorsey is being majorly slept on right now. Remember, guys, Ken Dorsey was the quarterback's coach for the Carolina Panthers during some of Cam Newton's best seasons, including his MVP season in 2015. He's also been with the Bills for years now, and he's a guy that has experience. So Ken Dorsey, a guy who they've also been very high on throughout camps and stuff like that, I think the scheme will be fine. I don't think it'll be quite Brian Daboll, but I think it'll be more than capable of producing an elite offense. So the Bills' offense is still one of the best in the league, with I think an underrated scheme, an improved running back room, an improved receiver room, and one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And honestly, they have the ceiling to look down on every offense in the league by the end of the year. That's how good they can be. For now, though, I rank them at number 5. At number 4, I have the Las Vegas Raiders offense. If you were to tell me the Raiders offense ended the NFL next season as the best in the league, I would not be shocked whatsoever. They have the talent to do so in almost every department. Derek Carr might be the most underrated quarterback, disrespected quarterback that's really good in the sport. He's awesome. Josh Jacobs is a pretty good running back. They also have a decent amount of depth there they've added to it. I think McDaniels has a very good scheme that is going to elevate that run game. Devontae Adams coming in, one of the best receivers in football. Hunter Renfrow, very good slot guy. I gave them an 8 out of 8. Perfect score receiver. Darren Waller, one of the best tight ends of football. This offense is stacked with weapons all over the field. They have a good run game. They have a very good to great quarterback. They have a very good scheme. The only thing this team is missing is a quality offensive line. The offensive line's not very good. It's not completely terrible. It's good enough to where they can still be an elite offense, but it's not good enough to where I have the confidence in ranking them number 1 with my criteria. So the Raiders offense has so much fun, talent, and I can easily see it being one of the best, if not the best in football as I rank it. But that offensive line does hold them back a bit. So at number 4, I have the very fun and interesting Las Vegas Raiders. At number 3, I have the Los Angeles Rams offense. This Rams offense we know is awesome. I don't really have to go too deep into it. I think Matt Stafford's going to have the best season of his career this year. I think he's going to be in the MVP discussion. I'm expecting big things. I think their running back position is solid. I like Henderson and Akers as a duo. I don't think Akers is as good as some Rams fans think, but I still think he's pretty good. At least in McVay's system. McVay's scheme, by the way, 9 out of 9. Great scheme. Great schemer. The receiver position, I do think, took a slight hit, but Cooper Kupp, I think, is the best guy in the league. I think Robinson's more than capable as a 2. I think Jefferson's more than capable as a 3. Higbee's a good tight end. The offensive line has also taken a slight step back, but it's still pretty good. So overall, this offense is awesome and will be one of the best in football. If they were the best, it would not shock me at all. At number 2, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. The Bucs offense is awesome. They've been the best offense in the NFL, or they were the best offense in the NFL last season. They were one of the best in 2020. Have they maybe taken a slight downgrade this season, decline off season? Maybe, but if they did, it's not significant. Tom Brady, I still think, is the best quarterback on earth. I'm unwilling to doubt this man and his ability. I think Leonard Fournette is a top 10 back. I think he's very good. I think the receiver core is not quite an 8 out of 8 because of Godwin's injury, but Evans and Godwin's, that's an elite duo. They've got decent depth with Gage, Miller, Darden, guys like that. The tight end position isn't very good. That's probably the weakness. Brait is all right. He wasn't good last season, but we'll see what he can do. He has shown in the past that he can be a pretty good player. The offensive line's one of the best in football. The scheme, actually, with Byron Leftwich impressed me last season. I think Leftwich is a little underrated just because of how bad Bruce Arians was. But Leftwich, I think, is a legitimately good schemer. Plus, they still have Tom Brady, who is, him and Peyton Manning are the two guys that doesn't matter what offensive system I think they go to, they're going to make it work because they're so smart. They're the two guys in NFL history that have shown me that. So, Tom Brady, this Bucs offense, they're going to be elite. They may be the best in the league. As of right now, I rank them at number 2. At number 1, the best offense in football entering the 2022 NFL season, I believe, is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals offense could legitimately be scary good in 2022. Think about this, guys. They were a top 5 offense last season. Top 5 in most statistics, passing and overall. And they were a terrible pass blocking offensive line. Awful. Disastrous. They were maybe the worst offensive line to make the Super Bowl in God knows how long. They have Joe Burrow, a 10 out of 10 superstar, stud, franchise-changing quarterback. Joe Mixon, one of the best running backs in the league. Jamar Chase, an absolutely alpha receiver in every way imaginable, one of the best in the league. T. Higgins, an awesome number 2. Tyler Boyd, an awesome number 3. They went from awful offensive line to top 10 offensive line. Good. The scheme isn't awesome, but it's very good, I think. I think Zach Taylor's being underrated right now. I think as an offensive schemer, he was pretty good last year in allowing his players to put themselves in positions to where they can thrive, especially as receivers. I think his receiving concepts are very good. The only question is tight ends, which I don't think is very good. But really, they're asking Hayden Hurst to be a 4th option, maybe even a 5th option at times with Joe Mixon and his ability on option routes and short routes and stuff like that as a receiver. And he can do that. He's done that before with the Falcons. So this offense is legitimately awesome. I think it's the best in the NFL. I think they have the least amount of questions, and I think they have one of the best overall offensive rosters in the league with a very good scheme to complement. So overall, I believe the Bengals have the best offense in the NFL entering the 2022 NFL season.